Hello and welcome to the third webinar around analytics and all that. And this one is all about Google Tag Manager, which is one of my favorite subjects actually, although it's very complex. So we're going to talk you through that. For those that are joining on YouTube, what there is a chat facility. So if you have any questions at all, just pop them in the chat, or if you just want to have a chat with other people that are here, go ahead. Saeed is managing the chat as well. So what he's going to do is going to collate all the questions that you have. He's going to stick them into a document for me, and then we're going to look at that at the end of this session. So anything that you might have, questions that I don't cover, just pop them in there, and then we can have a look. If we don't answer it at the end of the session, well, it might be a bit more complex. So what I'll do is either, if you're an organisation who's funded by the Arts Council or is eligible for funding from the Arts Council, you can have one-to-one support with me, so we can have a session together. Or what we can do is put it as part of the resources that I send following this. So if you're watching the recording of this webinar, what you'll find in the description of the video is the resources. So there'll be links out to the different resources there. If you've signed up to the webinar and you're here now live, hello. What I'm going to do is send an email to you, all the people that have signed up, and all the resources will be in that email. So anything as part of this, when I talk about that and say I'm going to send you more information, it will be in there. So Google Tag Manager. In this session, what we're going to do, I'm going to give you an overview of how it all works. I'm going to guide you through the steps of setting up an account. Then I'm going to explore and explain the benefits of using Google Tag Manager in your organization. And then I'm going to share some of the common tags and tracking that's useful for arts and culture organizations. Because when you look at it and you start researching it, there's so many things you can possibly do, but you need to focus on what's actually going to be useful for you. So let's get stuck in, shall we? So the first question, which is why we're all here as beginners, for absolute beginners, is this one. So what is Google Tag Manager? So hands up, who knows? Add it to the chat. I'm only joking, I'm not watching it at the moment. So what it does, it helps you measure activity, engagement and conversion on your digital channels. Now that sounds like a real nice sales pitch, that one, doesn't it? But once it's installed, what it does, it reduces the need. So I say reduce, it reduces the need for you to involve developers or external agencies, because you as staff members in your organization can then start to use Tag Manager to put things on your website that you would normally have to go through a long-winded process with either your developers or your agency. Now, what I'm saying is it reduces the need, is that there's probably still worth them being involved, especially in the initial setup, because what I'm going to show you now will give you the confidence to talk to your agencies about these things, but you don't feel like you have to do it yourself. I will be giving you some recipes, and I'll explain what they are in a bit, about what you can potentially do and implement yourself, but it's worthwhile having agencies and developers involved in that discussion as well. So I'm just going to put that as a caveat for you. What it also is, it's easy to collaborate, which is one of the real benefits of Google Tag Manager. You can have multiple users at different permission levels that can do different things for you. And when we get into the functionality, that will become a bit more clearer for you. One of the great things that I've found, and when I send the resources on after this, is that there's a massive community out there of people that are using Google Tag Manager, and they have probably similar questions to what you have, and there's lots of guidance out there. So there's a real community of sharing ideas and stuff like that around it. The last part of it is that it's free, which is great. We like free things. And what the core thing of what it does is it manages scripts on your website. So let's go into that. So your website or your app, depending on what you've got, usually made up of three main components. Now, especially websites, it's these three main components. One is HTML, which is hypertext markup language, if you didn't know what it meant. The next is CSS, so that's cascading style sheets. And then lastly is JavaScript. And I'll explain that in a minute. There are other coding languages that power things. So from a server side, whereas these are all can be on the front end. So this is the stuff that you access from the front end when someone visits your website using their browser. All this stuff gets loaded. So HTML is the structure of a website. So all the stuff that you enter, when you look at a source code of a website, you'll see the HTML structure, and it will be certain tags for different elements of everything in the page, and then the actual content that you've put in will sit within those tags. Without any CSS, there's a standard version that browsers will use HTML and format it in a certain way. So the structure of it will be formatted in a certain way. And without CSS, it will not be styled in a certain way. It will not be responsive when it comes to mobile design, especially for imagery and things like that. It will just be full-size images, all that kind of thing. So CSS is the style. And then JavaScript is the extra functionality and interactivity for your website. So all the fancy stuff that usually happens on your website, that's the thing for you. So that's how it works. So right, let's have a look at this. Just make sure we're running okay. Just bear with me. Okay, cool. So I was just double checking we were running all right. So I saw a message on there. Back to this. There we go. Apologies for that. Whiz through these again. And when we talk about JavaScript, that's what Google Tag Manager does. It looks after JavaScript. It can look after HTML and CSS as well, but I recommend you don't do that. And this is the thing that when I talk about it, I use a Lord of the Rings reference, because one ring to rule them all, whereas this is one script. So one piece of JavaScript to rule all the other bits of JavaScript that are running on your website, all the different functionality. But with great power comes great responsibility, because you are directly accessing what is loaded on your website through the Google Tag Manager platform. It's very, you've got the chance of causing massive disruption to the code and everything that's going on and the functionality and things like that. So you have to be very, very careful about what you're doing with this. So that's why the guidance that I'll send you and the resources and the stuff I'll talk through today is the simple things that you can probably do, which are safe and have been tested. There are lots of other things you can do, so just be very careful and be aware of that if you go in there and start playing around once you've set it up and installed it on your website. So on your website, you have multiple bits of code, such as Google Analytics, Google Ads. You might have things like Facebook pixels and Twitter pixels. So that's stuff that gets more information about your audiences. Or you might be running services such as Hotjar as well. Now, usually they are embedded on a code by code basis into your page templates of your website, or they're added to specific pages of your website as well. So imagine if you want to change something or edit it and things like that, you have to go into all those page templates, make these edits, and it's quite time consuming to make these changes. What Google Tag Manager does is takes all those away from your website, just takes them off completely, and you manage those bits of script, which are called tags. So each chunk of script is a tag. It takes them all off your website, and then you have one piece of script, so one script to rule them all is Google Tag Manager. That sits on your website. So now you have direct access to all the to the back end of your website. All those scripts can run and fire when you want them to. And that's where Tag Manager is really powerful, because it gives you an efficient use of scripts on your website. So instead of firing on every single page, you can tell it when and where to fire certain scripts. So instead of your web pages having to load every single script every time, you can be really specific about that. So it helps your website keep your website running fast, and then it's easy to manage this through the Tag Manager interface, and we'll look at that in a bit. I'm just going to talk about a technical element of Google Tag Manager, and that's something called the data layer. Now, if you're looking at resources around Google Tag Manager and stuff like that in the future, this will get mentioned quite a lot. And what that is it's a piece of script that Google Tag Manager adds to your website, or it's already on your website within the brackets, And that's a place for you to put information in from, say, your content management system, or say your ticketing system can sit in there. So that allows Google Tag Manager to read it. And what it does, it uses this to read and put information into it. So it acts as a container for anything that it needs to look at. So that's just a brief description of what the data layer is. And it is quite complex, but you don't really need to know about that at this level, because we're never going to see that. It's all happening in the background, but I just wanted to let you know about that at this point. So Google Tag Manager is made up in the back end and the interface and the tags and things, all made up of 3 key elements: tags, triggers, and variables. So tags, well, what do you want to happen? Okay, it might be running a bit of script. It might be put a cookie notice bar on my website, things like that. What do you want to happen? Triggers is when do you want it to happen? So I was saying earlier about things being specific and being efficient. Tag Manager allows you to fire things on a case-by-case basis. So it's constantly watching your website, and based on what you tell it to do, it will then fire the different tags. And variables are there to hold or collect any information. So when I show you some tags in a minute, we're going to see where those variables are and what that kind of means. And usually we have a constant value that sits in there, so we can change it en masse across multiple tags, or we can use it to collect information and then push it back into any other way that we want to. So it allows all the information and everything that's going on your website. We can pick it up, we can analyze it, and then we can push it back in any other way we want to. So it's so powerful. So what Tag Manager does is keep an eye on your website. So it's 2 eyes. I've just got a couple of eyes there, just to really enforce the point if you weren't getting it already. And it uses logic to set the actions. But it's dumb in the way that you have to set the logic. So it doesn't know anything that we're talking about unless you specifically tell it. And what we've got is the triggers, for example. So the trigger is looking for if. So it's all about logic, if, and, or statements, those kind of things. If X happens and, or something else, X happens, then the trigger kicks in. So the trigger is looking for that, and then the tag will go, then do this. So our trigger is constantly looking. It's got the 2 eyes looking at what's happening on your website, and it's going, if X happens or X happens, then do this. So that's when the tag comes in, the bit of script. So the simplest tag that you'll probably ever see is the one for Google Analytics. Now, one of the questions and the thing that I put in as part of the description for this webinar was that, do you know the difference between Google Tag Manager and Google Analytics? Now, Google Analytics is pushing, is where is all your information around what's your users on your website. And that normally, if you were in our first webinar, around Google Analytics, we showed you how to put that onto your website. So that bit of script sits on your website. Now, Google Tag Manager, what we're going to do, as we saw in the slides before, we're going to take the Google Analytics script, and we're going to put it into Tag Manager, and we're going to put Tag Manager on the website. So what Tag Manager is, and the difference is, the Tag Manager is the container, so the umbrella that's holding all the different scripts, and Analytics is one piece of script that's going to sit in that. So think of it as like a massive umbrella just looking after everything and keeping everything safe. And in that is one of the things which is Google Analytics. So Google Analytics for page views, because that's the standard thing, you need to install it on every single page of your website. So our trigger for Google Analytics is if a user visits any web page on your website, the tag is then fire Google Analytics. So if anybody visits website, then fire this bit of script. So simple, the most simplest tag that we have. Really straightforward, that one. It can get more complex and you put more stuff into it, more specific, and I'll show you some examples of those in a minute. So this is where we go a bit more specific. If a user visits a specific page, so not any page on your website, a specific page on your website, and they click play on a video on your website, then we're going to send that information to Google Analytics. Now, that information doesn't get tracked as standard with the Google Analytics. And that's where Google Tag Manager is so important, because all the different interactions with your website or with your content and the way users move through it are not tracked as standard. So it's only page views. It can only tell you that someone's looked at a page and then they were on there for a certain amount of time and then disappeared. Using tags, we can attribute certain actions and push that information into analytics to give us greater insight about what's actually happening. Are people finding the content you're putting on useful? Now, I've been working with SIPO at the People's History Museum, and we had a chat the other week about their website. So let's, I'm just going to go over to their website now and we'll have a look at it. So it's just phm.org. Okay, so this is, well, it says in the title there, the National Museum of Democracy, based in Manchester. And when we're on their website, you can obviously scroll down, see the different information and stuff. We were looking at what are the important metrics for this organization. So for People's History Museum, what are the important metrics for this organization? And well, I'll show you our lovely pyramid in a minute and it will break down. And I know what we've just talked about is really complex, but I'll show you it in practice, which should really help visualize it a bit for you. So it's not going to be, you will get it, honestly, and we'll go through it again if you don't. For the People's History Museum, when we look at this, core objectives for the People's History Museum are people to visit the People's History Museum, or supporters give us some donations, things like that. So revenue objectives and things like that. So some of these objectives we can track as goals within Google Analytics by looking at where they're visiting, what pages they're visiting. Brilliant. Now, if there's other things that people might want to track as objectives for an organization, such as when we scroll down the page, we've got things like videos here. Are people watching the videos that we're putting on? Are people downloading the resources that we're putting out? So we're spending loads of time creating loads of PDFs and stuff like that, and training packs for teachers and things. That's an objective that we want to achieve. We can't track that as standard analytics. So me and Sippo had a good chat. We talked through the different elements of it, and we came up with some of the things that would be useful for the People's History Museum. So I'm going to talk through those now, and then we'll get into that, and we'll show you some of the relevant tags. So for the People's History Museum, some of the core objectives that the website should achieve. So what is the point of your website? Intent to visit. So people are reading stuff around how to get there, what the opening times are, and so they're showing intent to visit. So at some point, after that point, they probably will visit. Obviously not in the situation we're currently in, but when things reopen, hopefully that'll increase, and then we'll see that as a core objective. Another one is newsletter signups. Now, for arts and culture organizations, newsletter signups are one of the most important metrics that you can have, because once you capture their details in this way, you can then open up the dialogue with them for a longer period of time. So it doesn't have to be, you don't have to give them all the information straight away. You can drip feed content over time. That's why email communication is still so powerful for you. So newsletter signups, absolute objective. And next one is watch and read content. So all the videos that we're putting out, all the content they're putting out about democracy and everything that's been going on or has gone on in the past, are people consuming it? So these are objectives. So you have to step away from the website. You have to think about these before you actually approach Google Analytics or Google Tag Manager. Another one is a revenue objective. So venue hire. So people get in touch to hire the actual venue itself, and then people getting in contact as well. Now, this pyramid is something we're going to talk about a bit more detail in a couple of our future webinars that we have coming up as well. So if you are signed up to our newsletter, you'll hear about those when they're all announced. But what I'm going to do is give you a brief overview of that. And the top level of this is your organization should have a vision most do. For the People's History Museum, as the National Museum of Democracy, they want to tell the story of past, present, and future democracy across the world, I suppose. And as the go-to place for democracy, democratic engagement, they want to help shape that future as well. So that's a real core vision for them as an organization. And their organizational goals that they want to achieve that are probably revenue is a goal. So they need to make sure they're making money so they can continue what they're doing. It's another goal could be working collaboratively with organizations across the world to bring their stuff into their collection and things like that. So you'll have multiple goals against your organizational vision, and the goal should lead into the vision. Now, when we talk about objectives and then the tactics, they're kind of marketing ones maybe, or the things, if it's not marketing, it's whatever you're going to do to achieve those goals and objectives. So our vision is this: we want to make more money revenue wise. So an objective is to increase the amount of money we make through donations. So that's where analytics and key performance indicators come in, and metrics and measures, because we drill down all the way through from vision all the way to KPIs that they're called, and say we want to track this specific KPI against all the other elements because it's going to lead into the vision of the organization. So with that in mind, we want to track venue hire, people signing up to the events that they have as well, if we're talking about revenue. So as I said earlier, within Google Analytics, the goals that you can set up within it, so that's within the admin section, you can set up goals, and those goals that you want to achieve, so those people coming to your website, what do you want them to achieve? Those goals, once they're set up, can then you can then look at the conversion rate of people hitting your website and then converting to it. You can really inform the marketing you're doing to see which channels that the people are coming in from are contributing to actually doing the thing that you want them to do. So if these are our objectives for the People's History Museum, I mentioned earlier, you could have a couple of them could be destination goals within analytics. So that's the first two here. So intent to visit, and then newsletter sign up, because newsletter sign up has a thank you page. We can say Google Analytics, we want a goal to set up on this. So look at that page. If someone hits that thank you page, then that's a destination goal for us. Tick. Now the other ones, we can't get that information as standard from analytics. So we have to use something called events. And we'll have a look at those in a second. Now we use Google Tag Manager to create these events and push that information into analytics. And that's where the use case is for this. I hope that makes sense. To look at the setting up a destination goal, so those first two, for the People's History Museum, when we look at the URL of their visit page, so I'm just going to zoom in there a little bit, you'll see it's /visit. So all we have to do to set that up in analytics as a goal is go to the admin section. We go to goals within a view that you have. Now, if you don't know what I'm talking about with a view and things like that, we've got the other two webinars, which we'll link to in the resources, and we explain that in more detail there. And what we're saying in this goal, when we set it up, we're saying the goal name is intent to visit. That's the objective that we want to achieve. The goal type is a destination goal. And all we're saying to Google Analytics is, if the web page begins with /visit, then that goal has been achieved. So then from that point onwards, Google Analytics will start to track that goal. So it'll keep count of the amount of people that are hitting that visit page. So we can start to see how many people that come to the People's History Museum website are actually looking at how to visit and are intending to visit at some point. So you start to build up a bigger picture of the kind of people that are coming to there, are intending to come to you. Now, with all the other metrics that you have within analytics, you can use them against that. So you can start to see the different demographic details of those people. You can also link it into the different marketing you're doing. So the adverts you may be running, or if you're using something like Facebook Pixel, which I'll explain in a bit more detail later on, that can give you can be really specific about the people that you're targeting, which is really useful for marketing the kind of stuff you're doing. When we look at the other ones, so the other three, when we've got events, now this is where Google Tag Manager comes in, remember, what we've got, one of them is venue hire. So when we're on the venue hire page, there's an email address. And what we want Google Tag Manager to do is keep an eye on where, if anybody clicks an email address on a website. So on this website, Google Tag Manager is sat there. It's just waiting. It's just looking at the page. It's just waiting in the background. And if someone clicks that email address, it will go, haha, someone's clicked that email address, and it will fire the tag. And we'll look at that tag in a minute. What that will then do is push the information into analytics. And they sit in a certain place within analytics. So when we talk about events, they go into the behavior report. So on the left-hand side of Google Analytics, there's behavior, go to events, and then if you click overview, you'll see the different events that may be already set up on your website. Usually there isn't any if you've not got Google Tag Manager or a relevant plugin. When we look at the event categories, we can now see in this part are the specific tags and the event information that we've set up for the People's History Museum. So what we have here are outbound link clicks. So when people click a link that is not the People's History Museum and they leave the website, it starts to push that information into here. So you can start to see the journey that people are going on. Secondly, we've got video. So when we've got the videos on the website, so they're embedded into the page, we can start to see plays, pauses, the percentage that they get through the video. So really useful information about how people interact. Then we've got file downloads. And then, so when you've uploaded all those documents, PDFs and stuff like that, that's pushing information in here. And lastly, we've got contact as well. And in contact, we've set up 2 tags. So what it's doing is going, so Tag Manager, remember, it's watching the web pages for any interactions that are happening. And the trigger goes, if a user clicks an email address, so it's looking specifically at email addresses that are clicked. So it's that intelligent that it can pick up this information. Or a phone number. So phone numbers are clickable on your on mobile devices and stuff like that, or it can like launch a phone system you have on your a phone platform you have on your desktop as well. So it's looking out for those specific things that happen. Then the specific tag is pushing the information into Google Analytics. So that's where we're seeing this. So we're seeing the category of, we've defined what those are. So when we look into the event reports and go into that, so we look at the contact category, we can then see the actual email addresses that have been clicked. So you can start to see who's getting, when people visit your website, who's getting in contact with certain email addresses, so certain people, so certain objectives that you're trying to achieve. Now you could set this up for a form, a specific form, or you could set it up in various different ways of how you are collecting information on your website. Now, in the last webinar, we talked about analytics best practice and saying that email addresses should not be in your Google Analytics account. Now, these ones, because they're your organization email addresses, they're not personally identifiable information. It's fine. So don't worry about that. It's okay to be in here because it's your organizational information. It's public domain information. It's not about specific individuals. So it's happy to be in here. So you're not breaching GDPR by having that information in here. So now that Google Tag Manager is pushing that information into analytics as an event, we can then set up a goal for venue hire because that information is now in here. So when anybody clicks that venue hire email address, Google Tag Manager is watching, it goes, oh, someone's clicked that, I'm going to push that information into analytics, and it's going to sit here within the behavior reports. With a goal, so again, in the admin section, in the view settings, we can say, what we've got here is, we're going to set the type of goal is an event. So in the options, when you select it, we'll give you that option, is the event. And then the label, so we've defined that pushes that information into that specific field, is going to be venue hire at phm.org.uk. So it's watching for that. So it's watching the events, and that's the relationship between events in analytics into goals. And then you've got core objectives. So all those objectives that you want to achieve, you can set as goals in analytics. And we'll go into analyzing all that kind of data in a future webinar to actually get down into the crux of it about how you can start to interpret it, that data. But at this point, it's setting up what's important for you as an organization. So the next step is we're going to create an account in Tag Manager. So you're going to see the interface next. And I hope that will help explain some of the things that I've been trying to explain through the visual diagrams on here, and it'll probably make a bit more sense. So let's just go into that. And what it is at tagmanager.google.com. So we're just going to go there now, and then we're going to look at a basic tag. What I'm using is, so this is the website we set up for the first webinar when we're looking at the analytics training. So what we're going to do is going to set up an account in Tag Manager, and we're going to install it onto this web page. So what we go is, so it's tagmanager.google.com. And by the way, because this webinar is being recorded, you can re-watch any part of it. So if you need to, because I know I'm throwing a lot of information at you right now, so don't worry about that. So because I have a Google account already that I set up in the first webinar, it took me straight in. Usually I have to accept something first. Now, creating a Google account, I'm just going to remind you again, you don't have to use a Gmail account. You can use your own email address that you already have. And I recommend when you're setting up something like this, your administrators on the Google Tag Manager account should probably be something like marketing at your organization. So if you ever leave the organization, other people still have access and can easily reclaim it if they need to. So within Tag Manager interface, it looks a bit boring, this one. What we're going to do is click this button where it says create account. So our company, we're going to call this one Digital Culture Network. So that's the account name. Let's say we're in the United Kingdom, of course. And then our container name is the address of your whatever website you're running. And you see here there's options for web, iOS apps, Android, and AMP as well, accelerated mobile pages. But we're just using it for web, so that's what we're going to do here. And it's analytics-training.co.uk we're using for this. Click web and create. I'll leave you to read the privacy policy and terms of agreement at your leisure. So once we've created that first bit of an account, what we'll do is create a one container for you. So it can create your first container. Now, an account is your organization. You might have multiple containers, so multiple websites that you want a Tag Manager account for. Usually you've only got one, but you might need multiple. And once you've done that, it will load this page and it will say, here's the code that you can install on your website. Now, we're not going to do that just yet. We're going to do it in a second. I'm going to close this little pop-up dialog. If I want to access that ever again, you click the name of the ID of your Tag Manager account, which is this up here. So it just pops up again. Just click that at any time you need to. Okay, so this is the back end of Google Tag Manager. So this is all the interface. This is where you manage your tags. Remember, tags are the things that what do you want to happen. Triggers are when do you want them to happen, and then variables are holding certain information. Now you see here, when we look through on the left-hand side, there's a navigation of this. Look through tags. There's no tags. There's nothing in here because it's just a brand new account. If we were to create a new tag, so we wanted to create a new one, there's a new button. You could give it a name, and when you click tag configuration, what it will do is give you a huge list of potential tags types that you might want to add to your website. And that's where it gets really confusing because there's everything in here. There's like Google Analytics, different ones, there's Google Ads, all this kind of stuff. And there's even custom HTML. So that's custom HTML is where you have to be really careful because that's a way to put random script into your website. So be very careful of that one when you're doing things. And you've got all these other ones when you can scroll down this list and there's huge different implementations. And what these tags are is that because JavaScript can be very complex and there's so much functionality behind it, what these tags, these ones that they offer you here, are pre-made ones. So they've been tested, ready to go. They've got certain fields already set up in there that you can add your information into. And we'll look at a couple of them for Google Analytics in a bit. But it just allows you to easily implement certain things by just changing a few fields and choosing when to fire it. Usually, like for the stuff we're doing here, it's all going to be around Google Analytics, but there might be other stuff that you want to implement, such as Hotjar or things like Google Optimize and things, which you might want to look into as well. So I'm just going to leave that. And then what I'm going to show you next is all about user management, because that's so important. Because you've created this account, you're now the admin of this account. If you install this on your website, and as I said, you leave the organization, nobody's going to be able to access it again. But you might want to collaborate with other people to put stuff into here. So within the top left-hand side is the admin section. And then you'll have your account, so a column for account, and then a column for each of your containers. And now within each container is where your tags, triggers, and variables sit. But your account can have multiple containers. So you might want to set, add people to the account level so they can see all the different websites and containers you've got access to, or you might want to set it at the container level so they can only see that one. So if I was to add somebody new, I'd click User Manager, and it's got me and the Google account that we set up for this. And at the very top right, you probably can't see it. I'm just going to move that down because my face will be in the way. There's a blue plus button, and that's where you can add users. So if you were to click that, you put the email address in who you want to send it to, and this is where you can choose if they are an administrator, or so administrators can edit tags and publish. Otherwise, you can have just users, so they can view what's going on, but they can't edit or change anything. So it allows you full permissions here about what you want to do. And then you can, because we're setting this one at the account level, we can then choose what permissions people have for specific containers as well. So you might want to give them all. So give them the option to publish, approve, or edit. So depending on the size of your organization, whoever you're working with, you might want to just give them access to edit different tags, and then it comes to you to test things out, make sure it's all working before you push anything live. Okay, so that's just a quick overview of how you can manage the different users. So once you've set the permissions that you want, you put the email address in, and you just press invite, and it will send them an email, and they'll be able to log into Google Tag Manager and then access all of this. So they'll be able to see everything that you've got on here. What I'm going to do next is save loads of time. And what that means is that with Google Tag Manager, as I mentioned earlier, there's a huge community of people out there already making tags and things that go into Google Tag Manager. So really useful stuff. So it means that it can speed along what we want to do, because there's recipes available with all the ingredients that we're looking for to achieve the things that we'd like to have. So what I've got, and this is something I'll send you as part of the resources, is that we've created a recipe with some of the tags that might be useful for you. And they include, so it's a ready-made recipe, I'm just going to talk you through them. So you might not want all of these, but they're going to be in it. You can install it and then test it and just have a play around. So this ready-made recipe has got the Google Analytics tag for page views. It's got the tag for file downloads, so this will track all the file downloads. It's got the outbound link clicks. It's got the email clicks, it's got the phone clicks, and then it's got the YouTube video interaction. So this recipe has got all of those in it already. So you install it into your Tag Manager account, you edit 2 fields, and I'll show you what they are in a minute. And once you've installed it on your Google Tag Manager, it will push all this information into Analytics for you. So it's amazing, it works. But if you have any questions about that, then please get in touch with us. So what I'll show you now is how you can import that into your Google Tag Manager account. So at this point, Tag Manager is nowhere near our website. It's not installed on our website. And all we're doing is managing and just getting things ready in Tag Manager. So what I'm going to do here is within the admin section, so go to admin, on the container column, there's an option called import container. So it's importing something sort of like a structure that's already available for you. So I'm going to choose the file. Now, as I said, I've already set this up. I've put it on my desktop. There it is. So I'm going to click it, press open, and you'll see it's got the name of there. And it uses JSON files for these. And that's just a structure of how the information is presented within the file that Google Tag Manager can understand. So it's all set up, and you can have a look at it if you like. It's a nicely structured document. What we're going to do is choose. It asks us to choose a workspace, and we're going to choose the existing workspace. When you choose this, there'll be the option for default workspace. So that's just the basic version that's already there. You can have up to 3 different workspaces. So as I said before, you can work collaboratively. You can have different workspaces where you're working on different elements of it. That's a really complex part of it that you probably won't go anywhere near, but just so you're aware. The next option of the import one, if you've already got tags in your account, you want to choose merge. Otherwise, it will stay on overwrite and it will just completely strip out everything that's already in your account. So be careful with that one. So we want to merge, and then we're going to rename any conflicting tags. Because there's nothing in our account, don't have to worry about that, but that's just for your future. If you're ever going to import any other recipes that are available online, make sure you select merge and then you select rename as well, just to remove any chance of any overwriting or anything like that. And what that'll do is say there's 7 tags that are going to be imported, there's 5 triggers, and there's 15 variables. And we'll have a look at those in a sec. Okay, so I've just pressed confirmed. And what that's done is pushed all those things into our tag manager. Amazing. So we've now got loads of tags. This is great. So what we need to do is go over to the left. There's an option called folders. So we're going to go in there because I've structured these in a nice way to make it easy for you to understand. Now, when you look through these, there's different folders for each of the different types of tags. So one for YouTube tracking, one for outbound links, one for Google Analytics, one for file downloads, one for contact. The one at the top, so it's called number 1, it says update these variables with your Google Analytics ID and your domain name. So as I said, these are the 2 things that you need to update. I'm going to do that now. So first off is domains. So you'll see here, it's just there. So we've got to click that. And the reason that we have this is that for our outbound link clicks, we need to tell Analytics what is our current website they're on. So we need to say the current website you're on is analyticstraining.co.uk. So if you click a link and it doesn't match that, then it's an outbound link. So it's just, we need to give it that information. So the value is, I've typed this in already from the last account, is analyticstraining.co.uk. So what you need to do is put yours in there. Now, ignore the www, ignore the HTTPS stuff, just the bit after that. So for People's History Museum, I would enter phm.org.uk into this bit. Once that's done, I press save in the top right, and that's that bit done. And then next, we want the Google Analytics ID. So the ID of your Analytics account. So when I click this, now these 2 things are variables that we're talking about. So it's holding information for us. And in this example, the variable that we have is the Analytics ID, and it's used across all the other tags that we have. So it allows us to update en masse all those different tags with one variable, and that's where it becomes really powerful. So what we need is the tracking ID for our Google Analytics account. Now, if you remember, when we were creating our account, there's 2 places that we can find that. So one is to use the Google Tag Assistant plugin. So if you search for Google Tag Assistant, it'll install it onto your version of Chrome. When you visit your website, if you press it and click where it says Google Analytics, it will then give you the UA code, so it'll give you the actual tracking code for your specific Analytics account. So that's one way of finding it. Second way is to go into your Google Analytics account. So go into your Google Analytics account, go to the admin section, go to property settings, and then you'll find your analytics ID as well. So that's what we want to copy, and that's what we want to paste into that tag manager variable. Okay. So we get that, put it in there. When we're looking at the different tags that are available, and we're talking about recipes that we've just imported, I'll send you a link to this as well, but there's an organization called Bounteous, and they've got loads and loads of recipes as well. So when you go to their website, there's lots and lots of recipes that you can import that you might have that we've not got there. So things like scroll depth, how far down a page people are scrolling, all that kind of stuff. Thought I'd just show you that quickly. What we're going to do now is, so we've saved that. So we've saved the two things. Brilliant. So those two things have been updated in there. All the other tags are ready to go. So our account's now set up in a really nice way. So what I wanted to just explain to you and show you was the different tags that we have here and how it structures. So that stuff I was talking about triggers, about how they would fire. I'm just going to show you that in principle with a couple of these tags in the account here. So outbound link clicks. So that's our first tag here. What we're saying, again, Google Tag Manager is watching the website. If a user clicks a link on your website and it is not whatever your website address is, because we've defined it in that variable, then send information to Google Analytics about that. So let's have a look at the actual tag in Google Tag Manager. So you see in the folder, we have 4 different elements. Now there's a line that says, a column that says type, and one's tag, one's variable, sorry, 2 are variable and 1 is a trigger. So I'm going to look at is the tag. The actual tags, this is the structure of how we've set it up, a tag. I know this is a lot to take in, so I apologize, but you're going to come out of this knowing everything about a basic instruction of Google Tag Manager, and hopefully it will help you understand it a bit more. What we're saying is in this specific tag is, and you don't have to set this up, it's already set up for you. We're saying it's a Google Analytics tag. So all that script I was saying is already there for you, already done by somebody else. And what we're saying is that the type of tracking that we want is an event. Now there's loads of different options here. One of them could be just a page view. So that page view tag that we had, the standard one, that's just using that and nothing else, and just fires on every single page of the website. This one is an event, because that's pushing event information into analytics. And this is where we give these next event tracking parameters are where we give it the specific information we're looking for to push into analytics. So what we want is the category. This is where you can rename this if you want to whatever you want. The category we've got here is outbound links. You might want to call it something else. You can just change that. You just edit the text here. The other information in the action and label, so that's stuff that's pushing into those fields within analytics. We're saying click host name. Now you're like, what's that? When we click this, it looks like a Lego brick next to it. It will give you all the variables that are built into Tag Manager already that you can pick from, and there's loads of them. So one of them in here in this example I'm looking at is click text. So the actual text of what people click on your website. So you can get really, 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 really specific about how these tags fire and what they're looking for to pull information from. Now for this tag, because we've got outbound links, we want to know what is the address that people are being sent to. So what link are they clicking? So what actual full URL is it? And then what is the domain name as well? So we can categorize it in that way. And that's what these do. So these variables that are built into analytics allow you to do that. So the click host name is the domain. The click URL is the full URL. And what we're saying is, Google Tag Manager, please look for any links. If it's not our website, then push the information into analytics. So that's how we set it up. And at the very bottom, we've got the Google Analytics ID. So that other variable that you updated with your specific UA code, that's where it's looking. So it's already using that saved bit of information and pushing it into here. So all set up, ready to go. When we look at the very bottom of the tag is where the triggering is. Depending on the type of tag that you have might have multiple triggers. because it's looking for loads of different things happening. In this example, it's quite specific. It's when we click into the trigger, it's looking at, it's going, is it an outbound link? And all we're saying is, first, is it a click? So it's looking for clicks. Yes, it's a click. And then next, is it outbound? Is it going away from the website? Yes, it is. So that's all that trigger is set up as. Very simple steps it's taking. So the logic of it is going, is something happening? Yes. Is it what we're looking for? Yes. Right, now fire the tag. So that then pushes the information when it happens into analytics. So we're now, from this point onwards, it's going to track that information without us having to do anything. It's all automatic from this point onwards. So you're not going to update anything every single time. You set these things up once, and forevermore that information becomes yours. And it's really useful as well. The second one we've got is file downloads. So another tag. So again, looking at my illustration here, the trigger is if the user clicks the link and the file extension is one of, so at the end of a link for a file, it would be like .pdf or .docx or .xls. You can specify which ones they are. We've put in these ones for now, but you might have other documents that you might want to track. You don't want things like JPEG because it will track people downloading websites when they visit websites, when they visit your page and stuff like that. So be specific about what you want to track. The tag then fires information to Google Analytics. Brilliant. So when we look at that one in here, we're looking at file downloads. We've got the tag, again, set up exactly like we have for the other one. It's Google Analytics, it's an event. The category is whatever we call it. In this case, it's file downloads. And then the action and the label are the file name, the actual file name of what we're looking for, and then the file extension as well. So we're pushing that information just to give us a bit more insight about what people are downloading. Do people look at PDFs more than they do Word documents, all that kind of stuff. So that's that one. So if at this stage, we've imported a recipe with all these tags on, we want to see it in action. So what we need to do next is actually install it onto our website. Now, as I mentioned before, to get that code that we're looking for is at the very top, and you click where it says GTM and then the name of the stuff. So we're looking for this bit of code, so a big chunk of code. There's also the bit that's recommended to install as well, which is the no script, if you can install that, but this top one is the most important one. So what we're going to do now is go to the back end of our analytics training website. We're going to install this bit of code, and then we're going to see if it's working. And if it is working, we're going to then publish it live. And if we're happy with that, we can then remove the existing code off the back end, because we don't want two sets of analytics code running, because that's bad practice and it will inflate your numbers and all this kind of stuff. So we've got this code. I'm going to copy it, and then I'm going to go to where are we? It's car.com. Back end of our website. So this one. Now, depending on the platform that you have, it will be very, very different about how you install Google Tag Manager. So if you want to let us know in the chat what platform you run, then I'll look at creating resources that are based on those different platforms. And I can see if I can find stuff that can lead you down that down the path to install it. Because if you're using WordPress, you might use Google Sitekit plugin to then install it. And you don't even have to do any of this. With that Sitekit plugin, all you do is log in to Google Tag Manager through Sitekit, and it'll install the information on your website. So it's really, really easy. This is actually one of the most difficult ways of doing it, is what I'm going to show you now. So the way this platform works, now this is a platform called Card, is you add script in blocks like this. So when we look at this, that's the Google Analytics script that we installed in the first webinar. So all about just Google Analytics. What I'm going to do is do a couple of press enter twice underneath it, and I'm going to paste in our Google Tag Manager script. So that's going to sit there as well. So we've got the Google Analytics script and then the Google Tag Manager script. Now within this script, it's got our unique identifier for our account ID. So that's the one in our Google Tag Manager account. I'm going to press done and press save and publish changes. So that's going to publish that. So both sets of code are now running, and we're happy with that. So when I go back to our Tag Manager account here, it's now installed on our website. How do we know from this side? What we can use is the preview mode. So in the top right, again, I'm going to move it out of the way so you can see because my face is in the way. Is next to the submit button is one called preview. If you press that and you are using Google Chrome, what it will do is it will give you a preview block that sits underneath when you visit the website, and we'll go to there now. So this is the web page. We've updated it. Obviously, we've just published it. So I'm going to refresh the website, and you'll see at the bottom is this whole bar of information appears, and it's called Tag Manager. And what that is the debug options functionality. So we're now in preview mode for Google Tag Manager. And what this does is it allows us to see, is anything firing? Are the tags firing when they're supposed to? So it allows us to test everything out before we fully implement anything. This is really powerful. And one of the other parts of Google Tag Manager is that it's version controlled, so you can roll everything back whenever you need. So in this example, I've got two things that are fired on this page. Great. So it says specifically tags fired. It tells me which ones are fired. And it says Google Analytics is fired. So that's our page views. Brilliant. That's the simple tag that one. And also the other one, which is one of the tags that we have in that recipe, is called YouTube find on page. And all it's doing is looking on the page, is there a YouTube video embedded in the page? That's all that tag does. So it fires on every page. Goes, is there a YouTube? No. Is there a YouTube on it? No, there's not one. And it's just checking. If it does find one, then it will bring in the other tag. So that's where you can link tags together. So it'll go, oh yes, there is a YouTube video on this page. Right, we're going to watch that video and see if anybody presses that button. If they do, then we're going to push all the information in. So this is where all this information, all this data can be pulled in and pushed into analytics. So we're really happy with that. We can see that some tags underneath where it says tag fired, it says tags not fired. So what has not happened? And those are things like outbound link clicks, phone or email, because those things haven't happened. If I was to click any of the links on this web page, I'm going to use Control and click, so it opens in a new tab. I'm going to click this one. I'm going to click another one. I'm going to click several of them. So I clicked about 4 links there. What you'll see is that we've now got the tags fired now tells us that outbound link clicks is fired 4 times. Brilliant. So we can test to make sure everything is working as it should before we publish any of this live. Great. So if we go to analytics now, actual analytics, and we go to the real-time view, what we should be able to see is me and my user pushing that data into Google Tag Manager. Now it's only working for me because I'm in preview mode. If I go to real-time in the top left, go to events, we can see, brilliant, event category is outbound links. And so I just zoomed in there, it went a bit funny. Brilliant. And then we've got the event actions, so we can see the domains that have been clicked on. So all this information about user interactivity. Normally, in analytics, we'd go, someone visits a page, and then they probably clicked something, but we don't have any idea. We can now see that they're clicking specific links and going off-site, or they're interested in a certain thing that we've provided. So it allows you to understand the user journey and the other stuff that you might want to track. So email clicks, file downloads, all that kind of stuff. We can start to now track because we're using Google Tag Manager. So if we're happy with that, it's all working as we should, what we need to do is publish the Google Tag Manager container. So we're going through all the steps of what you would do if you were doing it. Not that one. Where is it? There it is. So back to Tag Manager, clicking into our container, specific container. So we've been in preview mode. We can now leave preview mode. So we'll just click that, leave that. Otherwise, that bar will continually appear. and it will say container not published. So now that I left preview mode, it's not working. I'm gonna launch. I'm gonna push these tags live into that container. So we've got that bit of script that's sat on the website. We've got all the scripts, all the tags that are sat in Tag Manager. At the moment, they're not firing because they've not been activated, but we're going to activate them. So anybody that hits that web page from this point onwards is then going to push those tags, and they're going to fire because Google Tag Manager is watching, it's keeping its eyes out. So when you're publishing it, give it a name, give it a version name, because if you've got multiple versions, and this is where version control comes in, you can roll back. So if I do something on one version and it does something a bit weird, I can roll back to a different version. So it saves it in a nicely structured way that you can go back to. If you don't give it a name, you'll never know which one, where you made that change or anything like that. So I'm going to call this one initial setup, if I can spell, initial setup of tags. So it's the first one, first setup. And that information gets pushed in and is saved as a version, and we can see it. So in the top right is the option to publish. Okay, now that's done. It'll give you a summary of all the tags and things that are now live, and that's it. So your tag manager, you've updated 2 variables. Remember your unique Google Analytics code, and secondly, the actual domain name of what your domain is. It's tracking those things. It's published it live, and now from this point onwards, anybody who visits analytics-training.co.uk will be able to track those different metrics. We'll be pushing that information into analytics forevermore. We don't have to go in and touch any of that anymore. It's all automatic. Now, we've still got the original analytics code. So at this point, I would test, make sure the data that's going into analytics is good and we're happy with it before removing anything. But because this is obviously a live demo and we're just testing, we're just going to remove it now. So we're going to go back in. So we're here in the back end. You'll see that we've got our Google Tag Manager code there. We've also got the Google Analytics code, which is the top bit. Confusingly, because of the way that Google have set this up, is that the URL for the Google Analytics one is actually called googletagmanager.com, which is really annoying because it's so confusing. But it's that top bit. I'm going to get rid of that. It's whatever it's within the brackets for global site tag. So delete, and we're keeping the Google Tag Manager. Press done. Save. I'm going to publish that. So that's it. We've switched from having just analytics to now having Google Tag Manager with analytics and all the other tags. So from this point onwards, we can now have all that information pushing into analytics of interesting stuff that we want to know. We can set up specific goals in analytics against those different event information that's pushing in. And it also opens us up to be able to install far more functionality that we might want to in the future. So things like Hotjar screen recording and survey data and things like that, we can install using Google Tag Manager. So you don't have to go to your developer to install these things anymore. You can install it through Tag Manager. And there's support documents for all the different things that you might want to have. Now, I mentioned it earlier, one of the things was Facebook Pixel. And that's one of the really important tags that you might want to have, because if you can install the Facebook Pixel onto your website using Tag Manager, what that'll do is look at the audiences that are coming to your website, and then you can start retargeting them through marketing through the Facebook ads platform. So it's really powerful in that way. If you tie that to your website goals, you can start to exclude people. So you can be really specific with the marketing you're doing. So if you've got a drive that you want people to sign up to your newsletter, what you can do by using Facebook Pixel and linking through Google Tag Manager is say, people that have signed up to the newsletter already, just exclude them from any future marketing, because they don't want to see a message from you about signing up to a newsletter when you've already done it. So it allows you to be really specific and really tailor the marketing that you're doing. So there's quite a few different implementations you can have as well. I'm not going to go into all of those. Just want to quickly show you if you've got a ticketing system or e-commerce, you will have probably have two different websites. One is your website, you'll have your ticketing system on another, or it's like in an iframe on your website. Now, to pass information between those two things, Google Tag Manager can help with that. And what that does is you install Google Tag Manager, the same account on both platforms, and then you can pass information into analytics through that. And what that will give you is the commerce data that we looked at in the last session, which is like the revenue against the different channels that you have. You can see the email campaigns that you're running, are they generating revenue for you, all this kind of stuff. So it's all configured using Tag Manager because it allows you to control it all in that way really easily once you know what you're doing. And then we can use, like, break it down into demographic details and stuff like that. So yeah, those just wanted to quickly show you that before we jump to questions. And I've not had a look, so I'm not at a peak, so we don't know how many there are. So let's go. Let's have a look at your questions. I hope I haven't blown your mind. Let's have a look. Okay. So first up on our questions, I'm aware that we've just ran over time slightly, so please bear with me. Does it need to be and or? Can it just be if and then? Yes, it can. All those kind of statements. I was just using those as examples, but there's loads of different ways that you can do it. The triggers are really specific to whatever you want to have. Do you have to use Google Tag Manager for analytics events? No. Your developer can push that information into analytics by setting certain code on the web page as well. So that's another way of doing it. You could use a plugin. So some plugins such as Monster Insights will do all that for you. So as part of their free basic version of the plugin, it'll install analytics on your website. It'll also push in outbound link clicks and file downloads as well. There's loads of other stuff that it can do, but you have to pay for that as well. So I know Tag Manager it seems complicated, but once you get your head around it, get over the steep learning curve, because it is a steep learning curve, you can do a lot of this for free. So remove that cost. No, you don't have to pay for a plugin because you have complete control over that. And if you ever switch websites as well, you can take this whole thing with you to another website and then carry on as you were. So it's really powerful in that way. Okay, next. Can Google Tag Manager be used to trigger a pop-up? Yes, it can. So it can, when I showed you the one of the tags was for HTML, you could have the trigger to look at certain, like a time on page, as you say, 15 seconds, and then it can pop up whatever you want. So for things like that, you might want to do it yourself. So putting the HTML code in that you've pasted from a different platform. Or you could use, if you were to install something like Hotjar, they have banner, like cookie notices that you can use and newsletter subscribers, and you would manage it through Hotjar. It's a bit easier to do it through that side. So we've done that one. So what's the difference between doing that as a goal and just typing the visit URL under content? Now, so you could look at your content and you could look at the URL of that. But what you're missing out on is a goals against all the other metrics. And what's really good about that is that you can start to see conversion rates. When you're in those different reports, on the far right-hand side is the goals, the different goals. And you can choose the different ones that you want. And you can see a percentage of people coming from different channels are achieving that goal. There's conversion rate through it, and you can start to break down and work backwards about where they came from and the objective that you want to achieve. By just looking at the URL they visited, it's harder to break down that information. It takes longer to actually extract that information out. It's not as clear. Hope that answers that one. Anything that happens on Google Analytics feeds into Google Tag Manager automatically? Question mark. Is it efficient for two different member staff to be dealing with the two different platforms? Yes, I think it's fine. I think, as we've seen there with Tag Manager, what you're doing is setting up everything now. You're doing it once to set all these things in place. So you need to define what your objectives are, what kind of things you want to track, and you'll set aside time to do that in Tag Manager. Now, you're not going to go into Tag Manager every day because it's just going to do its thing. It's going to sit there and do its thing. You will go into analytics more often and see the data that's coming out there. So you can have different staff members doing different parts, but they will be doing it at different levels and at different times. Does it matter if you import this recipe but don't have all the things on your website, e.g. you don't have a phone number? Correct. But what you can also do, so yes, you can install it and all it will be doing is looking for it and never find it. So it'll just be wasting its time, the poor thing. I'm giving a personality to a bit of software, so apologies for that. Yes, what you can do is either just let it go, let it keep doing it, and if you don't have a phone number, fine, it's never going to find it. Or the tags that I've got in that recipe, you can either delete them or you could pause them. And I'll just quickly show you that. So I'm going to go into Tag Manager, into my workspace, and then I'm going to look at the tags. So if for your example, you don't have the phone number one, we've got our different tags here, and our one is called phone, so phone clicks. Now, when I click into the tag, I've got the option of two things. I've got one, is that I can delete it. I can delete it, and then I'll publish, so delete it and then publish the container, and then it will never look for that ever again. So one way, just delete it straight off, or you can just pause it. So you might want to use it in the future. You can just press pause. So there's the third option down. Oh, I just realized my face is probably in the way again. So there's delete and then pause, on pause, delete, pause. So I've paused it, press save. And then what it'll be an icon, like a little yellow circle with a pause icon onto it, next to it, and it will just be grayed out slightly. So within there, if I publish that container now, it will never be tracking that. So that's one way of doing it. Switch back. What if I run multiple websites, but only have my own single email address? How do I set up different dashboards or different sections of Tag Manager? So if you're looking to run different parts of that, I recommend having different containers for different websites. And then, yeah, you could have one email address and you can have multiple accounts, or you can have multiple containers attached to that. So for us, as the Digital Culture Network, we've got one email address, which is digitalnetwork@artscouncil.org.uk, which you can email if you want to get in touch with us. But we use that to access multiple accounts. So we have access to multiple Google Tag Manager accounts because we're helping different organizations in that way. So we have access to all the different ones, and we can see different elements. And we have different permissions for each of those as well. Okay, next. Do results show up in all views? Yes. So they'll show up in, unless you've specifically filtered it out, it'll push that information into all your views. If you don't want it to, then you could filter it out at the view level. Do we need to type in every file name that would download? Or will the tag pick up every file that they could download? You don't have to do it every time. And as we keep saying, it's the absolute beauty of setting this up. You set up these tags once, and forevermore, it will keep an eye out for the different files that could be downloaded. Now, as I said, this is looking for PDFs, docs, XLF, so that's Word docs, Excel files, and text documents. But there might be more that you want to add in at that level. So all it's looking for is that last bit. So does it match .pdf? If it does, then push that information in. So it doesn't matter what file name that PDF is, it will pick it up and push it in. And then what we've got, what if there is no shortcut for getting the code onto your page? How would I put the code directly into the HTML source code? So you should have a page template, and you should be able to edit it that way. If you want to get in, if you put a note in the chat, maybe we can pick it up that way. Or if you want to get in touch with us specifically for your organization and your website, I'll probably guide you through that a bit easier. Next one is, does the YouTube tag track every video on every page of the website? Yes. So there's two tags. One tag is looking, it goes, is there a YouTube video on this page? And if you need Vimeo, if you're using Vimeo, there's tags for that as well. Let us know, and then we can add that into the resources. But if you go to Bounteous, I think it's on their website. But if you're trying to find anything, either search for Google Tag Manager and then the thing that you're trying to achieve, and usually somebody's already done it, or use GTM. So that's obviously Google Tag Manager, but the short that's used quite a lot when you search for stuff. It's just GTM, Vimeo search. So for your YouTube question, yeah, it's looking at, because we set that first tag within the trigger to look at every single page on the website. It's going, is there a YouTube video here? And if there is, then it will push in the rest of the code, so that's where the efficiency comes in, because it will push in the rest of the code, which then looks at your interaction with that video. So it will say, have you pressed play? How far did you watch that video to? Did you get to the end? That kind of stuff. I'm especially interested in the download tag. I have hundreds of downloadable files on the website. Each has its own web address. Would I need, therefore, to trigger each one? No. The beauty of it, it's all automatic. How is it affected when web pages are changed? So web pages, because you're setting it to fire on every page or specific pages, depending on what you've defined, if you're asking Tag Manager to look at for a specific page and you change the URL of that, then you might need to update Tag Manager. But as standard, all of these tags, no matter what you do on your website, it's sat there in the background watching what's happening. So you don't have to, if you change a page or add pages, it's automatically going to be added in as well. So how do we connect the e-commerce and normal website data? That's a massive question. Depending on the platform you're using, it's either really easy or a pain in the bum. So get in touch with us and let us know what you're using. Some of the major ones we've worked with already, and it's quite straightforward. But essentially, there's an e-commerce tag. So we looked at the page view tag, the event tag, but there's an e-commerce version of that Google Analytics tag. And we asked that to fire on the very last page. So on the confirmation page of an e-commerce journey that you go on, you've sent your payment details. The last page, we push that information in. And then that pushes all the way through, and then you can see the beautiful journey that someone's gone through from whatever source, through your website, through the checkout process, and then bought the thing you wanted to do. And you can see how much they spent, and it's great. Next, would we have access to the ready-made recipes later too, please? Yes, we're going to send it as part of the resources. And if you don't get the resources, or it goes to your spam or something like that, I'm going to update this video that you're watching now. You're going to be able to rewatch it on YouTube, on our YouTube channel, and I'm going to put them in the description. So go down there. I've set up Google Tag Manager on our main web page. Can you explain how I can set it up on our ticketing web page? Yeah, so depending on your ticketing provider, let us know. It can be quite complex or not. And then next we've got, can we track individual page visits through Google Tag Manager? So yes, that is that first, let's just show you. As part of this recipe, we have that one. So that the one at the very bottom, you'll see that the event firing trigger is all pages. So this tag fires on every single page of your website. And what that is doing is we've set it up as it's Google Analytics tag, and the track type is page view, and then we want it to push that information to our Google Analytics ID that we've set. And that's it. That's, as we said at the very beginning, that's one of the most standard, most basic tags that are out there, is that it goes, I want this to fire on every page, and I just want you to send information to analytics. That's it. So yes. And then last question so far, unless you want to quickly get in, is how does Google Analytics still collect all the usual data that it did before being connected to Tag Manager? So it's that tag that we just looked at then. So this tag, because of the tag type, and we're setting that, you can't see it here, but there's loads and loads and loads of code that's going on in the background, and it's automatically putting that in for you. So it's doing all that heavy lifting. It's all set up. It's been tried and tested, and it does it for you. So you don't have to worry about that. The only script that you need to worry about is the Google Tag Manager script, and installing that on your website in the first place. That is the hardest thing you'll do. Everything else is, there's templates for things, there's guidance on it, and it's not as scary as it might seem. So yeah, I think that's the end of our questions. I'm sorry that we went, the questions went on for quite a while there, but I hope that's been a useful delve into what Google Tag Manager is. I hope you understand it a bit more. As I said, please get in touch with us as the Tech Champions. We are here to support the arts and culture sector. You can have free one-to-one support with us as well if you're eligible. So get in touch and then you'll find out if you are or not. But essentially, if you're eligible for Arts Council funding or you have Arts Council funding, then it's free. And we're here for you. We'll advise on you. We'll go through this if you need help, and we'll take you through those different steps. Now, I just want to quickly just finish up by saying we have lots of webinars we've scheduled. We've not released the schedule yet. We're just getting the date sorted, but we'll send you information about that. And what that will be is about all the other specialisms we have. So digital marketing, search engine optimization, website development, digital content, e-commerce, social media, email marketing, and then box office and CRM systems and ticketing. So there's lots to come. And this kind of stuff that we're talking about in this session about Google Tag Manager, your analytics, is so important to get set up and ready and all in place first. Because then when you do all the other stuff that's on this list, all the wonderful things that you might want to change or get better at, you can start to see change over time because you'll have your benchmark and then you can see, yes, our objectives of getting more people to do that thing we want them to do is increasing over time. So everything we're doing is working. So well done for getting through these 3 first webinars. Please do get in touch with us if you need. And thank you very much. Bye-bye.